I started using this task tracker at work, and it led to a $10,000 raise and my boss thinking I'm the most organized person in the company. What you see here is the continuous flow task tracker that I actually use at work. On my tutorial, I got some questions on how to create different sections in your list instead of having one continuous list, similar to how we had it in previous versions. So let me show you how to do this. I'm going to click one row beneath my recurring task and insert one row above. And next, I'm going to copy the headers. So I'm going to click A2 all the way through K2, and I'll copy those and paste those in row 7 that I just created. So now we have two different sections visually. I'm going to insert one row below this and put a 0 in column A. In the formula just beneath, just to the right of max, I'm going to change A3 to A8, which is the 0 that I just created. Just make sure you don't clear the anchors. And once you press enter, it should say 1. I'm going to use the fill handle to drag that formula down to the end of column A. So now the automatic numbering is set up for the bottom section. I'm going to hide the row that only contains the 0 in the bottom section. So the bottom section works just like normal. If you want to add a row in the top section, you'll just need to add the row manually and drag the formula down for the automatic counter manually as well. Now I'm going to show you how to automate a task with macros. As you can see here, in order to add a row to the top section, you have to add a row to the bottom of the section and then manually drag the formula down so the counter works, which is perfectly fine if you're only doing it once in a while, but if you're repeatedly doing this, it will get annoying quickly. So we're going to automate things with macros. We'll go to the menu bar and click Extensions, Macros. I'm going to select Use Relative Reference. Then I'm going to insert one row below and drag down the formula in column A. And after I do that, I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to name this macro add row. You can name it whatever you want. I'll put 1 in the shortcut. So now I can hit Command, Option, Shift, and 1 to run this macro without having to run it through the extension. So as you can see in cell A7, we have our formula. Now I'm going to show you how to run the macro the long way. I'll click on A7, go to Extensions, Macro, Add Row. And you can see that it automatically added a row and dragged down the contents of A7 into A8. And since we set up the shortcut, I can also hit Command, Option, Shift, and 1 to run the macro directly. And I can put text in here and everything's working properly. So that's how to add a macro to speed things up. And you can do this for one row, multiple rows, or no rows at all. It's entirely up to you. Every single one of my task trackers is meant to be 100% customizable. And that's what sets it apart from some of these tools that people keep mentioning in my comments, because I can make it however I'd like. So let's say I want to add a new column to my tracker. I can right click on the column, insert a new column to the right, and name it whatever I want. So normally we have our status in column D, and whenever we update the status, it will add a timestamp, and whenever we mark it as done, it will move the row entirely to the done tab. So you can see here, whenever we mark it as pending, the conditional formatting still stays intact, but we don't get any timestamp under task started. And when we mark it as done, not only do we not get a timestamp, but it also doesn't get deleted from this row and moves to the bottom of the done tab. But it's actually a super easy edit. So we'll go to Extensions, App Script. And once it loads, you'll see the coding that's behind all the automation. Right now it's set to go based off of the 4th column. So you just need to see where the status is now. So we added 1 column. Now the status is actually in column 5, so we can edit 4 to 5. After updating 4 to 5 within the timestamp section, I can go down to the Move Done section and update 4 to 5 as well. And in this section, we also look to see if the priority is recurring. So we'll need to update the 5 to a 6 since the priority is now within the 6th column. And one thing I didn't do yet that we need to do is we need to update where the location of the timestamps are going to appear. So now the not started timestamp will go in column 10, pending will be in column 11, and done will be in column 12. So now that all of my numbers are adjusted to reflect their new positioning, I can save this project and go back to my task tracker. And we can test it out. So I'm going to change not started to pending. And if I scroll to the right side, I should see the timestamp under task started. And if I change the status to done, I should see it move entirely from this row and go to the bottom of my done tab. Now if I go to my done tab, you'll see that the alignment is off, and that's because it copies exactly how that row is. So we'll need to insert that row into the done tab to adjust for the new column as well. So in my example, I'll click on column C and I'll insert 1 column to the right. And you can go ahead and add a header if you'd like. And then I'm going to select the entire row starting with done all the way through the end of the row. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to paste it to its correct location. So now everything is aligned and good to go. I'll go back to my task list and I'll change this task to done. And you'll see that it'll move entirely. We'll go back to our done tab and you'll see that everything is aligned properly. So now you can add as many columns as you want and you don't have to worry about breaking the automation. By default, I have it set where if the priority of a task is recurring, then if I mark it as done, it will not move to the done tab automatically, but it will stay put. And the reason I set it up this way is because I personally don't want the recurring task to be moved over and skewing my visualizations. But a lot of you asked how to adjust this so the recurring tasks are moved over, or at least copied over. In this edit, it's actually pretty easy to do. So we'll go to Extensions, App Script, and you'll see the code that fuels the automations. And down in the Move Done section, you'll see this recurring part. We want to select just before the open bracket, all the way up to the open bracket that goes right after done. And this will remove the recurring condition, so now all different types of priorities will move to the Done tab once they're completed. Then we also need to go to the very bottom and delete the last closed bracket. And once those edits are made, we can click Save Project. We can hit Run. You'll see that we have this error message, but it will still work, so don't worry. And now when we go back to our task list, whenever I click Done, even though it's recurring, it'll be moved automatically to the Done tab. So that's how to completely move the recurring task from the task list to the Done tab whenever it's completed. Now, some of you want the best of both worlds, so you want to leave it in the task list marked as done, but you also want it to be reflected in the Done tab marked as done as well. So in the app script instead, we're going to go from the second bracket to the bottom all the way through the if, copy that, and we're going to paste that right underneath that second bracket. The line that says sheet.delete row, we're going to delete that entirely since that's what causes the row to be deleted after we move it. And then up here where it says exclamation point equals recurring, that means not equals. So we're going to delete the exclamation point, and now it's equals recurring, which is equal to equals. So now I'm going to save that project and go back to our task list. We can test it out. So I'm going to change the status to pending, then go back to done. So now the task is marked as done in our task list, but it's also copied to the bottom of the list in our done tab. In my last video, I showed you how to edit the code, so recurring tasks will move completely to the done tab when they're marked as done, just like the other tasks would. But the problem with this is since they're recurring tasks, you'll have to complete them again in the future. But when you mark them as done, they move from the task list. You'll have to add them back manually. And if it's only one or two, that's perfectly fine. But if it's a lot, let me show you how to use macros to speed this up. So I'm going to go to Extensions, Macros, select Use Relative Reference, and I'm going to put the details for each of the tasks. So I'll put weekly recurring, run report, not started, recurring, and then I'll put my task focus. And then I'll do the same for the remaining tasks. And technically you could have this information on a separate tab and then simply copy and paste them each time you want to add it, but using macros speeds this up a little bit better. And now I'm on my last one, so I put a monthly recurring. Technically I would have a different macros for monthly recurring since they should be on a different cadence of when they're added, but this is just an example. So once you're done adding all your tasks that are recurring, you'll hit save and you can name that macro whatever you want. And you can also add a number to the shortcut to make it a hotkey. And once you hit save, that macro is live. So now at the beginning of the week, whenever I need to add those recurring tasks back in, I can click on column B, go to macros, and click recurring tasks or whatever you name the macro to be, and it will add those automatically. And as I mentioned, instead of having to go to extensions macros, you could use the shortcut you set up instead. In column D, we have our progress/status, and we have done, pending, not started, and next week as our options. If we want to change pending, all we have to do is just click on the pencil button, then change pending to working and hit done. And now in our dropdown, after we hit apply to all, you'll see working instead of pending. So it's that simple to update the dropdowns. But if you're updating the dropdown in column D, we have the timestamp and the automations tied to it as well. So normally whenever we hit pending, it will automatically add a timestamp for task started, but that's based off the word pending. So we'll need to go to extensions app script to change this. But it's super easy. So I'll find the word pending, I'll delete that, and I'll put the word working instead. And once I save that, now when I select the word working, I'll have that timestamp back. So as an example, we'll test it out. I'll go ahead and select the word working, and you'll see a timestamp appear under task started. Now, if you're wanting to rename the option done, it's still super easy, but it does require more steps since that's what controls the automation to move the task to the done tab. So just like last time, we'll click the pencil, then change the name. And you can change the color here if you want to as well. And once I have the name set, I'll hit OK and apply to all. I'll go ahead and exit out of the editor. And as you can see here, once I hit completed, the task doesn't move or do anything. It just stays the same. So I'm going to go back to the app script. And just like last time where it says done up top, I'm going to go ahead and change that to the new name, which is completed in this case. And now we need to do a second step that we didn't do last time. So in the move done section, we're going to replace the done with completed. And this will be the top done. The second done is correlated with the name of the tab, so you don't need to change that. Side note is if you change recurring in column E, you can change the word recurring to whatever the new option is right there. Once I save the app script, I should be able to mark any non-recurring task as completed, and it will move directly from this list all the way to the done tab. So as you can see, it's no longer on the task list, and if we go to our done tab, it's right there on the bottom. Now let's say that you don't want the tab to be named done because it doesn't really make sense for your workflow. So let me show you how to do this. So we'll go back to app script, and in that move done section, you'll see that done label. Just change that to the name of your new tab. And you can make this change even if you leave the drop down listed as done. Once we save that, we can go back to our task tracker, And we'll need to rename the Done tab as whatever we just put, so I'm going to go ahead and put it as completed. So now that that's all set up, we can go back to our task list, and now when I mark a task as completed, it'll be moved to the Completed tab. So just as before, it's moved entirely from the task list, and you can see it right there at the bottom of the Completed tab. So that's how to update your drop-down options to customize it for your workflow. Make sure to follow Sheets by Olin for more, and don't forget to follow on the other apps as well.